Okay. Let's talk about this for a second. We had Van Miller on and we talked for a little bit about some different products. You talk about life insurance in your books, you talk about annuities, paychecks and playchecks, you break down certain annuities, but I haven't heard you talk that much about specific life insurance. And one thing that Ben and I talked about at length in our interview was the modified endowment contract, and its use or its place in the mix or potential recommendation. And so, I find that when I've done a little bit of speaking and traveled part of the country talking, it's really a very undervalued and underutilized tool, even amongst the insurance agents. So there's kind of like this stigma because of its tax status that it's not valuable, but I've heard you talk about places where, and this situation comes up, you have somebody who potentially wants to leave some assets to their heirs. And they're like, well, don't touch this $100,000 over here. This is for my kids. And I've heard you speak to that concept about, well, that's not really efficient. You're leaving $100,000, transfer $100,000. Why don't you buy $50,000 worth of life insurance, leave $100,000? Can you talk about the MEC for a second and maybe where it serves its place?
Well, I mean, a MEC, modified endowment contract, really only matters is if you're trying to take money out of the contract, then it's taxable. If you're using it for a death benefit, it really doesn't matter. So I go back to my example where we put in $150,000 to buy $1 million of insurance that would go to our kids. Well, for 15 cents on the dollar, we transfer $1 million to our kids. Do we care if that's a MEC or not? I'm not going to take that cash value out. That's for the kids. But instead of leaving $1 million going to the kids, we took $150,000 to transfer $1 million. That's why you use life insurance. It's the leverage. It's getting the most for the least. And that's what I always talk about. How do you get the most income for the least amount of money? How do you leave the most to your kids for the least amount of money? It's all about getting the most for the least. It's the best value. I'm a big value guy. There's a difference between being cheap and being value. Cheap, you go to the dollar store, you can buy a dollar wrench and you put it on a bolt and take one and it breaks into 1 million pieces. That's kind of like a low fee mutual fund. It's cheap, okay? But it doesn't give you good value. The annuity might have higher fees if it's a variable annuity, but it does so much more. And so it's where can you get the most for the least? And that's what I write and talk about.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's an important factor and a great metric to determining if you're making a good decision or not.
Yeah.